All right, we good? Cool. So deputations, there are none. Members' business, leave of absences, have not been made aware of any. Matters of an urgent nature, also none. Updates, there are none. So we come to reports. Now, a reminder, and I know I send this out ahead of every meeting, of our soft tikanga, that we would have hoped to have had questions, especially detailed ones pertaining to operations, sent through ahead of time so staff can at least prepare a response or provide one before the meeting, just to make sure that we're running things efficiently, and also keeping our questions succinct and our contributions to debate succinct. And we'll aim to take a break at around 11, so we'll see where we get to by then. So like to invite up Ivona, and we've also got Stephen, come on up to the table, thank you. So this is 9.1 Better Off funding proposal for a contestable fund, Community and Affordable Housing Seed Fund. This has also been, we've had a briefing on this topic, and it's been through the Social Sustainability Subcommittee. So we've had opportunities to feed in thoughts, ask questions and make comment. And it's also, quite a timely thing we're bringing to the table. So if we can, again, try and keep this nice and succinct, that would be great. Over to Chris.
Kia ora, thank you. Just in addition to the Chair's comments, I just do want to point out some contextual information around us bringing to this table now, which is you will note in recommendation C that we have shared some information around an upcoming Housing Incentives Fund, the Build for Growth Fund, which will be in the vicinity of $1 billion. That MHUD is starting to talk to us about. And really the proposition that's put on the table today is us wanting to get ahead of that process to ensure that our district is ready to make the most of the opportunity through that incentive fund. We have discussed this in detail at the Social Sustainability Subcommittee. And I just want to note that they had endorsed bringing that through to the Strategy, Operations and Finance Committee. And so we are seeking your decision on us progressing with the fund today. So we will take the paper as read and back to the Chair.
Cool. Any questions? Councillor Coe.
Thank you. Yes, look, I just want to explore this fund. As you know, you've made the point there that it's an enabler for getting access to the $1 billion fund from government. It doesn't seem to come through clearly enough in terms of the criteria for applying for funding from the 150,000. And I'm just a little bit concerned that we might be taking too passive a role in terms of asking for applications to the fund. I'm just wondering, to what extent are we expecting to be working with other organisations to really shape up something that is actually going to position us well for this government money? Because I know that in other instances where we give out funding, it's very much of people apply in, we say yes or no, and they go away and do the project as per what they've submitted. I would have thought that in this instance we would want to be much more involved and hands-on in terms of shaping up how things evolve. And I'm also just wondering how specifically this money would be used. It talks about building capacity and capability. So are we envisaging this money being used, for example, to employ a person? What are some of the potential uses for that money? We're looking at sort of 2 to 5 projects being funded based on your recommended amounts of sort of 30 to 80,000. I guess, is this going to be impactful? If we start breaking it down to those kind of levels, how are we going to get the maximum bang for buck out of this money that's going to lead us to being able to tap into that funding that's coming through from government?
Okay.
It's quite a bit rolled up.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's important to recognise that there's quite a continuum and a range of interest in building community housing projects, and there's quite a we're starting from quite a low base as well in the district. We don't have any community housing providers that are based in Kapiti. We have organisations that have shown an interest in wanting to put together projects, and some of them have very exciting potential. So the idea of the fund really was to act as a catalyst to assist people to move that thinking forward. And I think the kind of things that might be funded, I mean, it might be that you have an organisation that maybe has access to some land, and maybe it's a feasibility project that needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
You might have an organisation that has is forming, and they want to look at a particular need that they want to investigate, or so. And in terms of working with organisations around any potential funding that comes into the future, I would see the council having a very clear role in assisting organisations who wanted to meet criteria of government funding coming forward.
Yeah, I might just add to that and say, I think the benefit of being able to engage with ministries like Emma is an understanding of what will be coming down the pipeline. And what we are seeing from this government is a real desire to get action oriented and get going. And so they're not saying, hey, would you like to think about what you'd like to do, and we'll give you some money to work out some plans. They're going, if you're ready to go, we're ready to give you some money. So I don't like the word shovel ready, but we're getting into the zone where they want to get some houses on the ground. They've already pushed out with their first 500. They've got another 1,000 that they want to push forward with. And so the idea is we're wanting to help our district be in a space where we can go. We've done our feasibility. We're ready to go. We've done those steps to push into that space. So we've actually got a number of, I'm going to call them initiatives underway, where we think we're starting to position ourselves. Not the topic today, but the affordable housing entity is one of them, and helping them to be in a position to lean into some of the space as well. But also saying it's about our sector. There's not one entity that's got what it's going to take to help us address our housing crisis. So I think there is a strong link to what we're trying to do in getting access to $1 billion. I'm not going to say we get $1 billion, but some of that would be great to have out this way. And so it is the stuff like feasibility test matter, getting people ready to have gone through things like resource consenting. So we've got the land, we're ready to go, we can build for you. That's the kind of zone we're trying to head into. So when we talk about, I think, capability and I think even the capacity, we're talking in what I'm going to consider it to be real terms. It's really practical stuff. It isn't giving you a person to do something. It's going, we need some outputs and outcomes that are going to help us get there. So we're going to be very focused on that connection. And if you think we need to build that more directly into the way that we've written our criteria, we're happy to consider how we do that. So
Yeah, I think that's what I'm suggesting, that we have a more hands-on role and be quite specific that this is, the intention is to lead us to be in a position where we're shovel ready for those projects. And that in terms of the projects we're supporting, they need to have that in mind, and the outcome needs to be that if we give them some funding, they are then in a position to be shovel ready or close to shovel ready.
happy to take that back and incorporate that.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Good suggestion, Councillor Coe. Councillor Spies, question from you.
Thank you. Having come from a family of builders who run their own independent building, I'm just wondering, has council defined affordability? Because as I read through the paper, I see there's quite a few hoops to jump through and quite a bit of work to do. And also wondering, have you any update on how many people are homeless in Kapiti?
In terms of definitions of homelessness, and there's quite a variety of definitions, but the one that we've adopted is the 30% of paying more than 30% of income.
That's
Yeah.
affordability.
Sorry? Oh, sorry, affordability.
Yeah.
So what was the other question?
Oh, just
Oh,
the
no,
number of homes.
We don't have a definitive number of the number of people that are homeless, but we do know there's a regular referral to services to assist people who are homeless. And the issue with having a number is that homelessness is very hidden often. There's couch surfing.
Yeah, that's
there's,
why I asked.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to put an actual number on.
Number on it.
I just do want to know around affordability. I am fairly certain that in the NPS reporting, we do lean into affordability information, so we can circulate that round.
Okay, because I was just wondering, if the cost of housing and building and materials and everything these days, and then you're looking at affordability, it's be pretty hard to match up. So that was all. Thank you.
Yeah, great points. Agree with Chris. Thank you for raising them, Councillor Spires. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, just a question around why my reading of the document is that it must be a local organisation. If it doesn't, I says, okay, did I read that wrong? So we can go, anyone in the country can bid for that money.
The key point is that the project is focused on Kapiti.
Oh, so the project's local, but any organisation can.
Yeah.
Because it said that we haven't got the capacity in our. I read that right. We don't really have the capacity within our area.
It might be that different groups form partnerships.
Yeah.
So, for example, there is no community housing provider that's based in Kapiti.
Yep. So I heard you say before that it might be someone local and the money will be used to get them up to speed. But wouldn't we be looking at using that money for the person who can deliver the best outcomes, as opposed to looking at local and getting them up to speed?
I think that
There's a dichotomy in that.
part of the role of the panel will be to assess the applications, and yes, it would be focused, I think, on the most certain to move forward with the project, but we'd want to encourage groups to get involved in this activity is where we're coming from.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I'm going to say I agree with Stephen's point about we want to be quite targeted and action focused so that we get outcomes for this community. And I am using these words carefully. We have a housing crisis. New Zealand has a housing crisis. It's going to take more than one entity coming in. We're looking at how do we build our sector capacity and capability, and that's not just about this fund, it's about partnerships, it's about a bunch of things we're doing that fit around this, because the reality is we need more help in this district. We have a social housing issue, we have an affordable housing issue, and that is, I think, just part of the steps we're taking to try and push some support into our system and sector to lift that. So it's just part of the solution or that we're putting forward, not the end point to it.
Yep. Well, that's quite good, because this is going to be decades out. So in that sense, you're right. If we can build our local capacity to have an enduring effect, that would actually be quite good as well as an outcome. So thanks for that clarity. It was good.
Thanks, Councillor Cooper. Deputy Mayor Kirby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Overall, really happy with this proposal. I've just got a question in point 39. It covers off the assessment criterion. The first one is alignment with grant objectives, which has got the highest weighting at 20. Outside of your statement in point 27 of the report, I don't see a clarity around what the grant outcomes are. So could you help me with the clarity on what the outcomes specifically that people are going to be measured on at the highest weighting? So those grant objectives, alignment with grant objectives, can you help me with what those grant objectives are?
Sure. It's really tying it back to the focus areas in the housing strategy. So they are explained in the paragraph 8. Yeah, and so those focus areas have actions behind them as well.
Okay, so in terms of clarity for the applicant, I think the grant objectives need to be tied to the strategy, not to the grant, because that's not clear in those criterion. It doesn't say our grant objectives are tied to our housing strategy objectives.
Yeah, and I think in our communications, we have done that, but
Okay.
we will look back on that.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Just more though, I think that's a really important point, and we'll make sure that we double check that we've got that clarity throughout all the material that we've got.
Awesome. Thanks for raising it. Community Board Member Carl Weber.
Kia ora, Sophie. Thanks. Thanks, Steve. Congratulations again on the housing work over the last few years. I think it's been fantastic. I think it's really good, the work that you've done with Māori and Ngāhapu and Ōtaki have been going fantastic, so that's really encouraging to see. Just a couple of points in there. 15% of 15% of the population here in Kapiti are Māori. A majority of that are urban Māori. I don't see us working towards urban Māori at this stage. We're more focused on iwi, and I'd like to make sure we keep a focus on urban Māori as we move forward. The papakainga specifically relates to mana whenua. It doesn't allow urban Māori to, urban Māori don't have customary title to lands here. I'd also like to ask at some stage in this policy if it's possible papakainga can include any freehold land, whether it's held by mana whenua, urban Māori or non-Māori. Papakainga for me is communal housing or co-living. It's not an exclusive word to iwi, in my opinion. Item number 42 of the independent panel. I'm wondering if it's worth thinking about having a Māori ward councillor on that panel, and that might cover some of the urban Māori needs in there. And we have people like the Smithsons. They're doing sort of transitional and emergency housing on the Kapiti Coast. Ian Castles, he's done a lot of work with City Mission. And Templeton, the airport owners, they put forward, with the proposed development, they were looking at 10 to 15% of that development would be social housing with some co-ownership models. So again, keeping engaged with those partners moving forward could be quite progressive for us. And that was about all I wanted to say. And yeah, I just think it's great work. And I think the assistance that you've been giving to people and Lawrence Impact Trust to get people housed into emergency housing, thanks very much. Congratulations. Yeah, that's about me.
All great points. Thank you, Carl.
Yeah, so we saw the team furiously noting down those first questions,
Yeah, cool.
and I think what we'll do is come back to you on some of the questions you've asked. I do want to assure you that we are linked in with the development and the point you raised about the opportunity to build social housing into the way that we're developing is really important, and we will be coming back to talk to the table around inclusionary zoning and what that looks like over time. So we'll come back to you on that. And I think just in terms of the panel, I think we have focused that at the moment on our current settings. As work progresses around the Māori ward, we'll look at how we might pick up on the point you've raised and come back to the table. So I want to say thanks. I think that's really relevant and useful feedback.
Hey, kia ora, thanks
Great.
very much.
Kia ora, Carl.
Thank you.
All right, lots of questions. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just a note of caution, really, that this is a housing strategy, and I noted the objectives in 8, but the note of caution really is around the objectives. And if the primary objective is to build houses and to be chainsaw ready and all that, I mean, it's laudable that we need more houses. It's great, and there's something to tap into. We should be ready for that as well. However, just the mad rush to build houses creates another issue. And so I've never been comfortable with the idea of a housing strategy as much as I'm comfortable with a community strategy. So you build a whole bunch of houses, and what's been left behind is the social, cultural, environmental impacts of those houses. Where are the medical centres for those people? What is the education facilities that are going to be provided? What's the recreation opportunities for those people? How does it link with public transport? All of those sorts of things that, an urban panel would get across. And so the danger is that
Yeah, is there a
those
question for
things
staff in there, Councillor Wilson?
Well, that should be the overarching question for every development that we have in Kapiti. Does it work? Because just building more house, people don't just live in their house. They have to go to a doctor or school
think-
or whatever.
Yeah.
Point made, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say absolutely. And those are really valid points. And I think that's about growing well, not just growing. And I guess I'm going to come back to this as one slice of the bigger conversation that we're having with you and our community. And we want to assure you, we are talking to entities like the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development about the need to get the support to fund the things we need in our community as we grow. So, and that includes things like health services and education. And we have been raising with them the lack of alignment in central government planning around growth. And so you know that we, for example, don't have enough health services already, let alone bring more people in. And the plans from a health perspective don't line up with that. So we're talking to them about, so what does that look like for us? And what funding can we have so that we can do things like progress polyclinics or other things in the interim that would be useful for our district. So that's a live conversation, and there's actually a building support from central government around the recognition that it doesn't quite line up and there is a need to do some other things around that. So this is not in isolation. We are very focused on that, and when we start to get into our next phase of Vision Kapiti with you around master planning, we're going to be heavily talking to you about where growth is and what our needs are, and being able to push that story with an evidence base to central government so that we can make sure that we grow well.
Was this a question, Councillor Wilson? Or could you save it for debate?
Everything is a question.
All right, Councillor, yeah, okay.
It's the nature of the universe, isn't it? Question everything. Yeah, so Councillor Halliday, who chairs the Social Sustainability Committee, is on the panel. The broader makeup of the panel, I mean, there are some drivers, but when will we know who that's likely to be?
We'll be aiming to identify the members by the 6th of September. Yeah.
And I might add to that we are going to be finding time for you to meet with them, and also the panel that we've established to identify those members, so that you'll get a chance to have a chat to them, to hear. There's more than 50 applications, isn't there, that they'll be working through? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, separate thing. Okay, but you'll be able to see both panels then, so that you can get a feel for who's coming through, because I think we've been blessed with a lot of interest and expertise and experience in the panels that we're establishing, which is exciting. And we've had feedback that this is not normal. So we'll be making sure you can meet people, that you get a chance to talk to them, and that they're really clear on what we're trying to achieve in our district.
Awesome. Councillor Halliday, were you looking to move
No,
the recommendations? Okay, over to you.
no, I didn't think it.
Martin's part of it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
of course,
so I
of
was-
course.
wasn't planning on moving.
Yeah. No,
Look,
of course.
just two things from my end. I just want clarity. This, the allocation of these funds is set to happen sooner rather than later. That's the aim. Is that correct? It's not something that's going to drag on. So yeah, sorry, so Carl, that Mighty Ward thing, but I'm on there anyway, as such. The other one is it was just a point actually that with regards to the number 8, Māori housing, that we start using that terminology, not just iwi, but iwi Māori solutions. It's just good to have that definition there, otherwise it could be pushed back. But yeah, we talk Māori housing, but it's not iwi housing, it's iwi Māori solutions. Although predominantly they will be iwi solutions. As we evolve, you might find that may change as such as well. That's it for me, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Pravanov, you have just one last question? Or?
Yes, I do, thank you.
Okay.
So following up from Councillor Wilson, my question in relation to master planning is, when will that work start and when will it be completed? And the reason I ask this is we often have this conversation, but to me it hasn't been landed, and in the meantime development continues.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's entirely relevant to the Housing Seed Fund on the table. So is it okay if we park that, Councillor Pravanov, and we can come back round to it offline?
if we can have an email to everyone, that would be great. Thank
Perfect.
you.
I think that'll be it.
Thank you.
Happy to do that.
Yeah.
And I am just going to publicly
Thanks,
note
Councillor
that
Donald.
we've agreed that we need to finish our first phase of Vision Carpeti, which is coming to you this and next month, and that we're able to go back to our community before we start getting into solution mode. And so we will be and have put reports into the agenda for you to start discussing that. But it's not a small piece of work, and there's many elements to it. And so we would not be stopping development while we try and sort out a master plan. It's going to sit alongside that. So I just do want to say that
All
and
right.
acknowledge that work's underway.
Great.
Chris.
Thanks, Councillor Pravanov. Thank you, Chris. I think Deputy Mayor Kirby would like to move. Someone who'd like to second the recommendations A through E. Mayor Holbrook, right of introduction. Councillor Kirby.
I'm just really happy to see continuing progress in this area because as it has been identified, and we've talked about a lot, housing is an issue. I note that affordability is an issue, and I think that is a challenge for us, that 30%, and even for any developer sitting and looking at building houses today, affordability is a massive challenge. So whatever we can be doing to support that happening, to remove some of the costs, whatever. But there is some stuff that obviously central government's going to have to do and come to the party in this. So we need to position ourselves well, and I think this is an opportunity for us to do that. So thanks, staff, for bringing this to the table.
Total call, very succinct. Mayor Holbrook.
Yeah, just a couple of points. This was discussed at the Social Sustainability Committee, and some really good discussion happened there. So, and some different points raised today. So good to have two bites at the cherry, and thanks to the staff for the work that's gone in. I just wanted to make a brief comment around D. We're agreeing to delegate the financial authority for the fund to the social sustainability. I don't have a problem with that motion, but I would note that already the committee has a delegation to consider funds. So I just wouldn't want it to be interpreted that we're giving them a new delegation, because they already have this delegation. And I also wouldn't want to set a precedent for us to be moving random delegations to go to committees that weren't there already. So the reason this is here is because we've already given both of our subcommittees the delegation to consider funding and grants. Just wanted to make that clear. Every little bit we can do in this space is absolutely fantastic. And I think providing a source of funding is really important, also as an incentive to bring those providers into the district. There's a lot of other work that needs to be done. I agree with Councillor Wilson. It's a huge problem, and we just had a conversation offline about it today, actually, about how central government are expecting us to grow, yet they see us as a rural area when it comes to health, and aren't bringing their pieces to the party in terms of the social infrastructure that we need to support the growth that we have in our district. So it's something that we're acutely aware of and taking action on. So I think every time we can raise that is valuable. So thanks for raising that today, Councillor Wilson.
Awesome, thank you. Right of reply, Deputy Mayor Kirby. Great, all those in favour? Aye, against? That is carried. Thank you. All right, so how are people feeling? Do we want to have a quick break now and then start the destination management strategy? Carry on? Okay, let's carry on for a bit and we'll see how we go. And then if we need to take a break, we will do so. Okay. So, yeah, thank you so much, Ivana and Stephen. Sorry, we're... Thank you. Oh, and one quick thing to note while Ivana is walking to the door, it's her first time presenting to council, Chris just mentioned. So thank you and well done. Thanks, Ivana. Thanks, Stephen. Okay. So item 9.2, update on development and implementation of the Kapiti destination story. And we've got Bronte and Darren. Oh, and George. Okay. Kia ora, Darren, Bronte and George. Yep. Or we can... Oh, okay, okay. Cool. Yeah, cool. Okay, so we'll get on to this item and we'll pass to Chris to briefly open and then over to the rest of the team.
Kia ora, and thank you. Again, I think I want to note it's with pleasure that we are bringing this update on the development and implementation of the Kapiti destination story. I think this is something that Council has been focused on for some time, and you handed I think a challenge or a goal to the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board, and with George Hickton here from our Tourism Board, Advisory Board, really to come back in the 12 months through 2023-24 to develop something around our Kapiti destination story. And it's great that we've done that. And so we've had a series of briefings with you. We have really unpacked and sought your input to shaping what the team is going to talk to you about, which is really about creating that identity for Kapiti and uniqueness that we have, increasing the visibility of Kapiti, and an ongoing sense starting to develop, and that's not just council, it's with our tourism and creative industry and other parts of our community, the products and ongoing material that makes Kapiti somewhere that people want to be and to visit. So I'm just giving you that background before we get into the detail to say today we're looking for your support to endorse where we've got to with the Kapiti destination story, to note that we're continuing to work with our partners, stakeholders and the industry to progress this work and to get their input around that. And also, we've previously talked to you about the idea of the launch, particularly in the zone of our intention to increase our visibility because of some of the challenges we've had about Wellington NZ and our shift to their website and losing a bit of our visibility through that process. So really pleased for the team to be able to step through that with you today, and I'll hand over to them. Thank you.
Sorry, I just see that the Mayor has her... Did you have something you wanted to say, Mayor Holbrook?
No, I'm just waiting for.
Oh, you're just waiting for. Okay, cool. Yeah. Sorry.
I'll wait for them to go first.
Yeah, if anyone else wants to line up their questions, it's quite helpful for me as a chair when you actually tell me in
I really want
advance.
to get my one in first.
Okay, sorry. Over to Darren and the team. Oh yeah, we're just trying to get the microphone. Yeah, there we go.
Good to go. Yeah. Kia ora tātou, nei rata mihi, ina rangatira, kua hu mai nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thanks for the opportunity of perhaps just briefly introducing where we as the Tourism Advisory Board have got, in conjunction with obviously council officers working on this identity story. One of the important things to recognise is this is part of a wider story that we're working on, and that about 2 years ago there was a destination management plan developed for the region. We've been working on that plan since then, particularly on the three key parts of it to start with. Number one is bringing the industry together and starting to identify the full breadth of the tourism industry in this region, and we've had quite a number of meetings over the last 2 years. The industry starting to come together, is starting to coordinate and cooperate with one another as we start to build sort of more of a tourism dynamic than we've had before. So that's quite a long process, but that's starting. We've got the next meeting with that group Tuesday of next week, and that's a regular thing that's been occurring, and we're starting to see some benefit from that. The second part of it is to obviously develop an identity story that everybody can take part in. And the thing about the identity is it's not exclusive at all. It simply is an identity landscape that people can be part of as they develop their businesses. It doesn't exclude anybody. It doesn't matter whether they're producing beer or in a B&B. It simply starts to talk about the sense of place, that where we are, and that we all start to contribute to that by our own actions. The third thing we're looking at after that is obviously how we continue to build the quality of the tourism experiences we have here and the breadth of them. So those are the things that we've been working on. We're obviously at the identity part of it now. This is quite important for us because, you know, what we do with it is how we approach the various markets that we're wanting to attract. The number one market for Cavity is Wellington, there's no question about that. And I've said before to this group, if we look at what's happening just over the hill in terms of the Wairarapa, they get about $1 million a week better than we do out of the Wellington market. We want to change that, and we have to change that by appealing to the Wellington market with what we have to offer, and that's what this identity sets out to do. The other thing that's very important to recognise here is that when it comes to international tourism, we're not going to present Kapiti separately to or try and do that in the international market. We simply don't have the money or the opportunity to do that. Most of our international tourists will come to us via Wellington. They're essentially the region that has the wider regional remit. We've actually met with Wellington, New Zealand. They've agreed that they have a responsibility for marketing this region as part of the wider Wellington region and the international markets. They have the money and the capacity to go offshore and go to the various trade markets that you need to be part of in order to make that happen. And my own background, I've been 10 years as running Tourism New Zealand. I'm also a director of 7 different tourism businesses in this country at the moment, or chairing those. I can assure you that what we need to do is feed off larger entities. And Wellington is a larger entity. They've got a big task ahead of them to improve their international arrivals. As they do that, we can feed off that. So the identity that we're presenting here allows us to feed into that market. It allows us to offset or access into the wider international market as well as we go forward. We also think it's providing us a very clear opportunity of presenting this region authentically for what it has and ensure that those people who are interested in either visiting, working, or actually living here actually are attracted to do that. So for those few words, I'll hand over to the other team. Thank you.
It's pretty hard to follow that. Good morning. Look, definitely endorse everything that George has just said in terms of this piece of work. You know, for the team, it's been a really great piece to really start to think about how we represent the district, how we think about our pieces of work going forward, and how do we ensure that what we're developing doesn't exclude all the opportunity in the district. This is the start of a piece of work. It's not the end of it. The big thing a lot of times in terms of launching these stories is that people think the job is done, but it's actually the ongoing work to make sure that we're using our channels, we're getting this messaging out there, that we're getting other people involved in the process is crucial. And it's definitely been really important that we don't do anything that excludes that from happening, that we do things that can really, people can sort of identify themselves in and make sure that we have a story, not just a brand, not just a tagline, that we have a story that people can engage in and represents the district. You'll see in the material that, you know, the things like the narrative and the way that we start to position ourselves all start to fall within a overarching umbrella, and really important that we start to identify, as George said, the authentic stories about what makes this district really special.
Kia ora. There's a little more that I could add. Much has already been said. Through this process, we've had really strong leadership in the Tourism Advisory Board and the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board, which has been fantastic. And we've also engaged a lot throughout the way with our tourism industry and with yourselves through workshops. So we've taken on board feedback and opinions along the way. And the task of creating one overarching theme that the tourism businesses and visitors and the industry can pull from, we feel that we've achieved that in what we've set out to do. So as Darren said, it's about increasing our visibility and the ongoing implementation. And so that is where we will really see the local pride be built from through those tactics. And that's something that's really important to do as much as attracting the visitor market, the locals really need to take pride in this, and so that is a very much part of the implementation plan for the Kapiti Station story going forward. I'll take the rest of the report as read, and we'll have questions.
Great, thank you, Bronte, Darren, and George. There are already, as you can tell, quite a few questions that have been lined up, so thank you, team, for getting in early. We'll go to the Mayor first. Mayor Holborough.
Yeah, I'll put my light on because my question's for Chris, but I was keen to give them a chance to speak first. So I'm aware that we're at a certain point in this journey where we've developed an economic development plan, a destination management plan. We've set up the Kotakitanga board, and as an offshoot of that, this board to do this piece of work, and we're now landing where we are today. My question is, what would happen, what would be next steps if we didn't endorse this today?
I think the way that I'll respond back to that is I'm going to say we've been trying to land the Kapiti destination story, from my understanding, for several years. For a decade? Now I've got a decade. Decades. There we go. I would encourage you to think about whether there's an opportunity to put a stake in the ground, to have something that we can work with to move forward. I might also suggest that part of the process that we are working through, and I think Bronte may have deliberately mentioned our engagement with tourism, our industry, and people in the community who really we want to have some ownership of this story to take it forward, that we're presenting back to you today the feedback from that community. So we have mentioned to you that we've set up some forums, some launch opportunities where those people are coming into a room to talk to you. So at those launch discussions, if we are not planning to endorse or put at least a stake in the ground with opportunity for further conversation to refine it over time, I guess we'd need to think through the conversation that we're going to have with those people who have already put a huge amount of time and effort into working with the team on that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, it may not be about perfection, about having everything landed and going, kapai, we're there. I think it's about being able to say, we're heading in a direction, we are listening to you, we've heard from you, we want to have some more conversations. So today we're really, really keen to get endorsement, even if it's in principle, for the Kapiti destination story and where we're headed, acknowledging that you may want to have more discussions. So I do know it's a really important thing, and there's a lot of interest in how we land this. Clearly we heard from a member of the community this morning who popped a view on the table. I think I'd like to just reiterate from an operational perspective that part of what we offer for you, and we are doing, is there's an evidence base that sits behind what we do. I did mention to Darren Grant that one thing I'm keen to be able to share with you today is just a bit of information about the numbers. So George has mentioned that our biggest market is Wellington. We've actually done the research around that, and we're not denying, for example, that there's an international market, but when you start to unpack the numbers and the feasibility around doing some of the things that I think people might have ideas about, what we're trying to do is come to you with some practical steps, and they are steps. It's not a completed picture. So you could not endorse that today and say that you want more work, but I am going to say that you gave us 150,000 to do the work that's been done, and we have been delivering that for you. We are presenting in this paper not only a starting point for an identity, but new websites that we have worked very hard on with input from our community, so that we can create that visibility that disappeared when we closed our website. So it's part of a bigger story, but I guess that's what I'd want to say to that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep, Darren, did you want to add something to that as well?
I was just going to add, in terms of the toughest thing with these things is nobody has ever trying to get 100% agreement on these things is always hard. And in the past, when we've done these pieces of work, when we haven't had that 100% agreement, we've put it on pause and we've waited. And it means that we can never get momentum. We can never have something that we can build in terms of actually, here's a campaign we can start to actually get behind. We can start to align our different pieces of work to say, well, when we look at a major events fund, what are we trying to achieve in terms of positioning the coast? So one of the things that we have lined up next is a policy review to look at that and say, we invest $200,000 a year on major events. How do we ensure that they attract visitors, but they help tell the story also? And so the ability to have something that we can sort of say, this is something we can see as a message for the district, something we can get behind and actually build momentum on is really crucial. So I suppose what we're concerned about is we don't want to lose the opportunity to actually start to make those steps happen. Obviously, it's your decision as councillor sort of thing, but we see this as a really opportunity to start to really build momentum, really focus our efforts, really focus activity, and really start to try and make some tangible changes to the work we're doing.
Great, thank you, Darren. Councillor Coe.
Thank you. I have two questions. I'll ask them one at a time. So the first one is, you have consulted widely in terms of developing this brand. It is really important, obviously, that there is buy-in to the brand, otherwise it's not going to be used and it will fail. So I'm just wanting to check to what extent has the concept of the Capital's Coast been fed back to the people you have consulted with, and if it has been fed back to them, what is the feedback that you've had from the groups that you've talked to?
So we have engaged with the tourism community in shaping and workshopping all the concepts and the common themes that this one overarching story needs to contain. In that we then told them we were going to go away and work on that and bring everyone's thoughts together and find one unifying theme that we can run with. And we haven't gone back to them yet, as it was important that we seek endorsement from this committee first before we then publicly went out with that. We brought the options through councillors with workshops to discuss that within this council chamber. And yeah, the implementation of that would only commence seeking endorsement.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is potential for.
Sorry, maybe. Oh yeah, I think it's coming.
Questions.
Oh,
I just
yeah,
want
there
to
we
follow
go.
on through. Oh, okay. So, right. So, so there is potential for more feedback to come back in on the Capital's Coast concept, and so we need to be prepared for that. Because obviously we need that buy-in from people to that concept. So.
Oh, sorry, George. We just have to wait for your. Yeah, there we go. You're good now. It's on.
We're good to go. Okay. We ran quite a number of workshops with the tourism industry. Just to be very clear, we are Kapiti. We do have a coast. These are things that are self-evident. We're not going to move away from. But also understanding how important these things are into the future. The Capital's Coast thing has been endorsed by the Tourism Advisory Board. We've been right through this thing right from the start. We've had quite extensive meetings with the consultants who have helped us get here. So obviously next week the key issue is to go back to the industry and say where we've got to. Could I just make another point to add to what Darren was saying about you need time in terms of building your identity. You can't just drop it into a region, any region at all, and expect it to happen. It happens when everybody starts to coalesce. 25 years ago, last week, I actually launched 100% Pure New Zealand in this country. It's still going. The Prime Minister later that year disagreed with it. It took around about 2 years before finally Helen Clark decided it was one of the best things that New Zealand could do in its international markets. And that it was because the industry got behind it. Not only the tourism industry, but other industries started to say, this is a branding that works for our country. So you can't just drop these things in and say wholeheartedly that's going to solve every problem. How it gets solved is when everybody starts to look at how they're going to use the brand in their own activity and how they work to it. And what I would say has been raised here before, this has been going on up here for decades after decades. We've never landed on anything. And so this provides us a foundation, we can build it, and we can build it very strongly. I'm absolutely committed that this is the way that we can actually finally establish an identity that Kapiti can get behind.
If you've got one last question, or yeah.
So just following on from that, so in other words, it's more important that industry gets in behind it than the elected members around this table get in behind it. Yeah, so because we'll all have different views. My second question is, we've had some murmurings that around the table that we are bigger than, than what this implies, that we shouldn't be hanging on Wellington's coattails, and that we should be looking to attract people from international markets, and also we should be looking north. So what would you say in response to those comments from people?
It doesn't exclude us marketing anywhere. It simply describes where we sit in relation to the capital, which is never going to change. It doesn't mean that somebody who's in Manawatu or Auckland or anybody can't come to the capital's coast. It simply says where we sit in relation to that. But importantly, when we look at the international market, as I said earlier on, Wellington will be doing the marketing for us. There's no doubt about that. We're never going to have enough money to go offshore and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in international marketing. We need to feed off a big international market that sits on our doorstep. That's Wellington. I think they could be doing a stronger job there, and hopefully they will do. But we need to pull the international tourists off that market. And that's why the positioning works for us. But it doesn't exclude anybody. Someone in the Wairarapa isn't going to say, I won't go there because it's the capital's coast. They'll say, hey, it's the capital's coast. That might be worth going to. What's on offer there? What does that coastal environment provide? Because they don't have that there. So it's not an exclusive positioning, it's an inclusive one, but it just clearly identifies where we sit in the landscape and how we can attract people here.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I think we'll just go to Chris to make one brief comment now, because I just passed on a couple of questions that we're struggling with.
Yeah, I thought it might be useful just to clarify. We're seeking from the committee today, and you'll see this, an endorsement, so not approval, endorsement of the Kapiti Destination Story as it's been developed by obviously the Tourism Advisory Board, and it's been approved by the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board. So we're bringing this to you, as Bronte's mentioned to go. Here's where we've got to. We're wanting your endorsement, because you'll note in items B and C of our recommendations that we're noting that we're undertaking further engagement with our industry, our sector, and we were talking to you about our launch. And I just want to be clear, the launch is related to our websites and putting our presence back out there, and that we're still doing more work. So I just want to give that clarity. We're not asking you to approve a final, anything final. We're asking you to endorse the next steps that we're taking. So this was part of our process to ensure that you are included in what we're doing, given that the Destination Management Plan and it's linked to the Economic Development Strategy itself is something that you've tasked the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board and the Tourism Advisory Board to do with industry effectively. I won't say on behalf of council, but on behalf of the community. So we'd carefully use those words. So I just wanted to clarify that point. We're asking for the endorsement of this is where we've got to, and here's our next step. So I just want to put that on the table.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I think going back to what Bronte was saying too around then that endorsement potentially enabling those further conversations with the tourism industry and providers, so that, yeah, what we're doing today is not saying this is the Kapiti tagline, this is the final thing, but it's just potentially if we endorse it today, it's just providing you the agency to do those next steps in the process. So yeah, thank you, Chris. That's really useful from my end. Carl Weber.
Hey, kia ora, Sophie. Thanks, guys. Kia ora. So I think we first heard about this about a week ago. I've actually lost sleep over it. Sorry, about the Kapiti's Coast. It hit my radar about a week, maybe 2 weeks back. And I've been waiting for an opportunity when this is public to be able to speak about it. So I'm not too sure when to speak about it publicly or in council.
Is this a question or?
I can give you one question, or I could just do a little bit of an explanation behind what my thoughts behind it.
If you could pose the question now and then contribute your thoughts in debate, that would be just to keep it tidy. Thanks, Carl. Killed it.
Okay, so from the Parapatimi Community Board, we feel there's been a lack of community consultation. You haven't engaged with your community or the community boards about this rebranding. And if you want community buy-in, you're going to need to contact the community. I'm an avid photographer, and I've been hashtagging all my sunsets for the last 5 or 6 years, and encouraged thousands of photographers to be doing the same. Hashtag Sunset Capital, so it's Kapiti with an L on the end. That's one idea. 6 years ago, I posed the question out on social media. What are people's thoughts about, what would be our brand? And we had hundreds and hundreds of ideas. So I guess my question would be, what has been your consultation with this local community and the community boards around what you are going to rebrand us as? Kia ora.
Sorry, I hope I can perhaps start a response to that. I'm going to say through the mechanisms we have, such as the Tourism Advisory Board, we have started this work working with our tourism industry back to that point of ownership and being able to align to, I think, the kaupapa that we are trying to push forward with. And the intention is there will be wider engagement, and that's what we're trying to signal with our ongoing work. But I am happy to offline just step through the opportunities for engagement that we have offered to elected members, all elected members, and the briefings that we've had previously on this topic where we've invited feedback and engagement. So I'm happy to go through that and to make sure that as we're doing work, people have awareness of those opportunities.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think it'd be good to gauge the other community boards' feeling around this. My take on it is that they feel a similar way. There hasn't been community engagement and buy-in to this. And I don't see how there could be, because it really hasn't been public knowledge until about the last couple of weeks, as far as I know.
I think maybe I can say that as we progress this, once we've gone through our next phase of next engagement with our tourism industry and we have feedback around where we've got to, we'll be looking to do subsequent engagement with wider groups. So can note that, and I can see that George looks like he'd like to add to that comment.
I suppose that what I'd like to add is this is a tourism identity campaign. This is not a community campaign at all. This is how we're going to attract people from outside of the region to come to us. So it's not designed to impose any identity on people within the community at all. It's simply how we want to coordinate all the things that the tourism industry does outside of the region in a cohesive way, and that this provides it. So it's not denying any of the things that the members raised about sunsets or anything like that. That's all available, but we're looking at how we can unify the tourism industry and how it presents itself outside of the region, and that's our main task. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's really useful, and also to understand that there will be further conversations before any kind of final sign off of such an identity, an external identity. Councillor Wilson.
Actually, I'm just not sure that that's correct. I think an endorsement of this today takes us far too far down the rabbit hole to go, oh well, we're still open to fresh ideas. We're not. I did wonder. Unfortunately, the last of our psychiatrists has left the Kapiti Coast, so we don't have one. But the inferiority complex that is just written all over this needs serious consideration. I wondered about the ambiguity of it. And on the one hand, when it comes to the name, after your robust conversations, they decided that the word coast wasn't a good idea. People said, no, we don't want to use coast. And yet, when it comes to the positioning, suddenly coast reappears, but not next to Kapiti, but now next to capital. So I just wondered, there's a massive ambiguity in the reasoning there, and I just don't understand that. So that's my question.
Okay, thank you for that. And also just to remind the table that we have had numerous interactive workshops on this, where I remember, us going from table to table and workshopping the words as well, and how they could potentially be paired and mixed and what they represented and to who. So just to provide some, refresh in people's minds of those conversations as well. Maybe
I'm not sure. Maybe we can take that question offline, and I may circulate round to everybody the feedback you've previously given us around where the work's landed to date, because by and large we did look to get your collective support for where this is headed. I'm going to look at Bronte. I think it was about 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago. But we'll come back to you and circulate that to you along with the feedback that you provided to us, so that you can see what you had said to us was important, because that's underpinned the work that has progressed to where we are today. So perhaps in that offline capacity, you can share any additional feedback or thoughts, because we won't be able to solve that in this meeting today.
Yeah, okay, I think that sounds like an apt way of moving forward. Yeah.
I could try framing it as a question. Maybe it is more of a speech, but I guess the question is that the level of disconnection between what we've got here and what happens in the real world. For instance, one of the big billboards that you've got up there, cruise up to the capital's coast. So if you'd been here this morning and reading the news recently, there's a real drive to have a bylaw to ban cruising on the Kapiti Coast, because that's what we've just heard this morning. So I think the more connected you are with the community, the more likely
I'm
you are
really
to go,
not
"That
hearing
doesn't
a
work."
question, Councillor Wilson, so we are
Well,
going to
does
move
it
on
work?
because there are
How
so
connected-
many.
No, the question was, how connected have you been to the community? And we've already heard from
I think that
Carl,
question's
not.
already been asked,
Yeah.
and so we're just going to. Yeah. Okay, Mayor Holbrook.
Sorry, we've got debate during question time. And if we've got a subject that we don't kind of agree with, it's really important that somebody has the right to move, have the right of introduction, and we keep the conversation structured.
Yeah.
This thing about framing debate as questions is not really an acceptable way to conduct a council, a meeting of the council.
Yeah.
And I'm just wanting to provide you with a bit of support there as chair, because we've got elected members around the table pushing that a little bit. I'm just a suggestion. It's 11:15. We've been going for quite a while. The conversation's kind of deteriorating a little bit, in my view. I suggest to the chair that we take a short break.
Okay, yeah. Well, should we take a break until 11:30? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry for overstepping my mark.
No, I think that's good, because I agree it is a little bit hard to manage when I can tell that there are a lot of lights on, and it feels like we're sort of asking very similar questions, but also trying to put in our 2 cents all at once. And as you say, there's obviously some disagreement or some tension around this topic. So yeah, I think that sounds like a good move. Is that okay, Bronte, Darren, and George, if we take a 15-minute break and come back at 11:30? Yeah, okay, we'll do that. So we'll pause, get a cup of tea, come back refreshed.